pandemic response here in America?
I mean, it's the individuals that are running the World Health Organization that are funding it, and then highly influential, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's the Klaus Schwabs of the World Economic Forum. Again, I don't know exactly how they pull the strings. What I will say is that they exert far too much influence over our lives, over our governments, than what they certainly should.
Finally, let's take a look at the plans of Mr. Global and the controlled politicians and how these plans can be prevented. Amazingly, anyone can read what Mr. Global and his puppets, such as Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, or Bill Gates, the Microsoft founder and world's largest vaccine investor, are up to. It is all out in the open. For many years, following in his father's footsteps, who was a convinced eugenicist, Bill Gates has been talking about the need to dramatically reduce the world population. For years, he has been in the headlines again and again for using alleged vaccines in Africa and India, which in reality led to the sterilization of women and girls. Klaus Schwab goes in the same direction and spells this out, for example, in his book, The Great Reset, and demands beyond that, supported by the current Pope, by the way, a world government under the UN, which has, in the meantime, been brought under control by the WEF. This is to be achieved by creating as much worldwide chaos as possible in the form of pandemics, wars, including civil wars and natural disasters, so that the world population becomes convinced that the national governments are overwhelmed and only a world government can help. At the same time, Schwab calls for the shifting of all wealth to Mr. Global so that in 2030, no one, except of course Mr. Global, will still own anything, but will supposedly be happy with that. In addition, and this is the central building block in Mr. Global's strategy, cash is to be abolished and replaced by a digital currency. This will be allocated to or taken away from every person in the world, who can then also be found anywhere at any time by various tracking systems. This is to be done by a single central world bank. Quite obviously, therefore, this is in particular the opinion of the psychologists and psychiatrists whom the Corona Committee has heard. When it comes to Mr. Global and his puppets, we're dealing with psychopaths and sociopaths. The vaccines are completely ineffective, as the example of Israel shows particularly dramatically. There, 86% of the people treated in hospitals for COVID are double vaccinated. And the vaccines are highly dangerous. Through a whistleblower, it has become known that the numbers of deaths after vaccination in one of the U.S. registers have been falsified. Conservative estimates now arrive at least 500,000 deaths after vaccination since the beginning of the vaccine rollouts. In addition, there are other serious side effects such as neurological disorders, thromboses, myocarditis, and more. For the fall, winter, and coming spring, experts expect severe problems for those vaccinated when they encounter the so-called wild virus in the form of a cold or flu virus, due to ADE, that's a cytokine storm, autoimmune diseases, and more severe cases of thrombosis, among others. Since these vaccines damage the immune system, not only will each subsequent booster cause more damage, but precisely the contact with the so-called wild virus will as well. All the massive side effects that have occurred in the meantime were known to the American CDC long before the vaccine rollout began. Worse yet, as evidenced by the now disclosed contents of both the manufacturer's documents submitted to the EMA, the European Medical Agency, and the manufacturer's secret contracts with nation states, the manufacturers do not know whether their so-called vaccine is effective. They do not know it. Nor do they know if it is dangerous. But they demand immunity from nation states in the event that claims are made against them for vaccine injuries. And they also explicitly demand that if there are alternative methods of treatment, which do, of course, make vaccines completely unnecessary, their experimental products must still be purchased. And here's another important piece of information. Through the WEF, Initiated by Klaus Schwab in 1971, Mr. Global has been training his own puppets since 1992 through the Young Global Leaders Program. Angela Merkel and Bill Gates were among the first class to graduate, the class of 1992. Even a large number of current leaders, politicians, predominantly weak personalities with, however, mostly well-trained rhetorical skills, also come from this program, including Macron in France, Kurz in Austria, Justin Trudeau in Canada, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, but also the German Health Minister Jens Spahn and the EU Commission head Ursula von der Leyen. Against this background, which increasingly more people are recognizing, very large legal disputes have been set in motion or are now being set in motion in India, in South Africa, in the US, in Canada, and in France, among others. Their goal is to hold those who are responsible for this pandemic accountable under both civil and criminal law.
Yes.
The Berlin Corona Committee already now has extremely incriminating evidence proving that this corona pandemic never had anything to do with health.
String 'em high.
Rather, Mr. Global's actions are aimed solely at these goals. Destruction of regional economies to make the population dependent on Mr. Global's global supply chains, shifting the wealth of the world's population from the bottom to the top, to the super rich, to Mr. Global, population reduction, you can call it genocide, as well as Mr. Global gaining total control over the remaining population, and the installation of a world government under the UN, which is now under control of the World Economic Forum.